All right. Hi there, gang. This is your pleasure of getting about my 30th video lesson of the summer, but this will be your first of the year, so I hope you enjoy it. Today we're going to be talking about why the American Revolution. Why did it happen? What were some of those big ticket items, those big rocks that led to the revolution? And we're going to start with a scenario. So the first thing I want to do is talk a little bit. I'm going to give you a scenario, and you're going to tell me how you think you would react in that same situation. Hold on just a second. All right. So let's say one week you come in and I decide, you know what? I'm working too hard teaching you guys. So what I've decided to do is I'm just going to hang out at home. And I've decided that I'm going to put Rhea in charge. She is now going to be in charge of all of you. And I will email Rhea exactly what I want the rules to be of the classroom and exactly what I want her to have you do as far as learning. And she will be the one that is going to be in control of you guys. Now, I'm not going to stop getting paid even though I'm really not doing the work because you guys are still learning, so I might as well still get credit for some teaching. And on top of that, now I got to spend time at home with the internet emailing Rhea. So I'm also going to charge each of you a $5 internet fee. So each week you'll bring $5 in, and that's just to pay me to use my own personal internet to be emailing Rhea. Also, what I need is every Friday, I need two of you to stay after from the hours of 3:30 to 6:30 to help clean my room, mop, dust, things like that. Um, just really make it look nice for all of you guys who are going to be in there, because obviously I won't. I'll be at my own home sitting on the couch. Now, suppose this were to happen. How would you feel? How would you react if I legitimately came in and told you this is what was going to happen? Now, you're probably going to start yelling at me and telling me that I'm a little bit silly for thinking that this is serious and that this is going to work. Um, and also, Rhea will probably be upset because I'm putting her in a bad situation. But regardless, let's say I still try to do it. I don't care how you feel. I'm still going to do that. And then my next question would be, what would you do in that situation? What would you do? Now, the likely scenario is you are logical people and you say, well, Mr. Van Eppen's not even here. He has no idea what we're actually doing. So we can do pretty much whatever we want and get away with it. And you'd probably get away with it because I have no idea what's going on. So that's actually a pretty good representation of what happened with the American Revolution and leading up to the American Revolution. So, I mean, to give you the most basic idea, why did we have an American Revolution? Well, in a word, it's independence. The people that were here wanted independence. Think about the hard journey. You've already looked at the hardships that the people have ensued to come here. You know, it would take weeks, months on a boat. It is not an easy thing to pick up the home from the home you left and come over to a new land which you know nothing about. These people wanted something. They wanted more and they wanted freedom. So they didn't come here so that somebody else in England could tell them what they wanted to do. All right, this is our multi-flow map. This tells you kind of an outlier of what I'm going to talk about today, and also gives you kind of the cause and effects. So what we have here is this. We're going to start here. The British spend a lot of money in the French and Indian War, and the king looks to bring in money from the New World. And this is George III. So the king during the revolutionary time is King George III. So they were in a war, the French-Indian War. They won, which we're going to talk about in a second, but that caused an issue because before this, it seemed like there was plenty of money to go around. Everybody was hunky-dory. Everybody was happy. There wasn't a lot of tension between England and the colonies. However, when England entered this war, everything changed. Then the king tried to take advantage of the New World, and some of these things started to be an issue then. So we have geography, salutary neglect, which I'm going to talk about, actually it should be colonial legislature, and what was going on at the time, which was the period of the Enlightenment. So you couple all of these things together, and what you have is an upset king who's going to dig his heels in and embark more rules, or in trying to impose more rules, and that leads to the revolution. All right, so first of all, the French and Indian War. Let's take a step back to the end of last year, and if you will recall, we talked a lot about Wisconsin history, and the people that first came to this country, or first came to our state, were the French. They were not the English that settled on the East Coast. They were the French that came in through Canada, right through here, down into Door County, and they were the ones who settled Wisconsin. Now, if you will also recall, there were a lot of Native Americans that were living in Wisconsin at the time, and the French had to try and get along and go, use the resources with them in tandem and be respectful of the land. But over time, the French didn't want to do that. They wanted to do what they could to gain money. Now, what you'll see here in this map over here is all of these kind of peachish areas were controlled by the British. Okay? The green area in the middle here, that was controlled by the French. And then this area right here was areas where both the French and the British had stake in. Now, what's going to happen is, starting in this area right here, especially over here in the Detroit area and Lake Pontchartrain, there's going to be some battles between Native Americans and Frenchmen. And what's going to result from this is an all-out war between the Native Americans and the French. As a result, the English look at this as an opportunity. They look at what's going on and they say, you know what? If we join up with the Native Americans, we might be able to win with them, and we can drive the French out and take over more land to the west of where they currently controlled, and actually more specifically gain total control of this region right there. So that is what they did in 1634 to 1763, is they fought with the Native Americans to push out the French. They won that war. However, the cost of war was extremely high, and the war left the British extremely in debt. So the war left the British. This is not too much unlike what happened with the United States during the Iraq War, or during our war against terror in Afghanistan, the Middle East. We spent a lot of money on the war, and it left us deep in debt, and we're still in that debt, and that's part of the reason we were in a recession to begin with. Well, King George III, this guy right here, he knew that they were in debt, and he looked at the situation his country was in, and he decided, you know what? The best way to get the money back and get out of debt is to demand more money from the colonies, because it's very easy for people over in England to get upset with King George if he demands more from them. So it was just easier for him to demand more from the colonies. And that came in the way of taxes, and also just asking them to sell more. And that is where some of our issues come in. So he's going to start taxing them and asking them for more contribution. The first issue that they ran into was sheer geography. Now, if you look at our map, we have the East Coast is right here, and you have London, which is right here. Now, I'm not sure what all these lines are, but even in today's world with our modern technology, if you hop on a plane from Appleton to Chicago and then hop on a big jet from Chicago to London, it's about an 8.5, 9-hour plane ride. Now, during these days, you're talking 3-4 weeks, maybe longer, maybe months to get from London to the New World. There's no way that if the king wanted to impose regulations, he could do it as easily as we can today by just passing laws, getting it out there on the internet, getting it out there on TV, letting people know, and then having all of your law enforcement there to enforce it. If he wanted to put in a new law, he would have to send some representatives on a boat all the way from London, about a month's journey over here to the New World, to let all the colonies know. And then they would laugh at him and just say, well, we're not going to follow that. So then the king would then have to send reinforcement in to try and enforce these rules, which still he didn't have enough firepower, he didn't have enough manpower to enforce some of these rules. So geography became a problem for the king. Even before geography, we had these colonial legislatures in place. Basically what was happening is the king knew that each colony was going to need somebody in control, and it couldn't be him. So each colony had a prime minister. And what that prime minister would do would basically be to be the king in that region or in that colony. Each colony had a prime minister. And that prime minister would write back and forth to the king, let him know how things are going, let him know how they're doing as far as earning money for him. And basically it was the middleman between the king and the people living in the colonies. Furthermore, the prime minister in each colony would set up a government. Set up a government. Okay, so the prime minister would set up a government, a group of people that would serve below him, and they would talk to the people living in the colonies and ask them what their issues and concerns were, and they would try to incorporate that into the rules and regulations that they would have set up in their government. They were basically an early democracy. Now, many of our founding fathers, Ben Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, many of these people served in these early legislatures, which is why they were so influential once we fought for independence. Okay, the next idea is this idea of salutary neglect. Now I want to take this slow and break it down into two words. So first of all, salutary. If you look at the word salutary, it looks like a word which you are familiar with, which is salute, which essentially means to show honor towards. Okay, so if we salute something, we show honor towards it, salutary, saluting something. Then neglect is failure to do something. Okay, so then if we have salutary neglect, what it is a failure to show honor towards something. And in this case, the failure to show honor towards is Great Britain in terms of money. Okay, what was happening at the time here is the British government had set up a system based on mercantilism. Now, what mercantilism meant was the people, the New World, made money for the motherland. Or fatherland, if you will. Okay, so you have England, which is the motherland, and they have these offshoots, all these charter countries in the New World, and they had this system set up where they required that whenever the colonies would sell something, they had to sell it to England first, and England would only pay a certain amount of money. Okay, so I'll repeat that. they would only pay a certain amount of money, and the colonies were required to pay, or were required to sell to England first. Well, the issue with that is that many of the prime ministers, one prominent prime minister in general, or first and foremost, Robert Walpole, he decided this is kind of a bogus system. It doesn't help us at all, and I don't see how they're going to enforce it. So what he did is he wouldn't enforce it. He would allow his merchants in his colony to sell to other countries. He allowed them to ask for more money from English buyers. And what that did is it increased competition in their economy, which was good for the colonies and brought in more money. And furthermore, other countries would be willing to pay more than the English because they really needed those resources because they didn't have all of them back home. This really irritated the king because to the king, this is a blatant disregard for loyalty to the flag and to the queen. And this is basically treason, is what it is. Then the last thing we're going to talk about today is the Enlightenment. Many of you have heard of this period of the Enlightenment before. It was basically a shift in the thinking of, I guess, our world from a more conservative, everything is based on religion approach, to now with the Enlightenment, a greater focus on science and a greater focus on things like artistic qualities. And overall, the period of the Enlightenment was a period in which free thinking, excuse me, free thinking was the name of the game, and you should not be controlled by other people. That is what the thinking began, or the prominent thinking of the day that soon became popular, is that we are all our own people. We should be able to think for ourselves and do what we wish within reason. And that idea spread to the New World, and this goes in order with this idea of independence, that the flag that the King George III, should not be allowed to have a greater say over the colonists than the colonists themselves. All right. So that is our lesson for today. Those are those big rocks, the four big reasons why we had this revolution, why a conflict arose between Great Britain, King George III, and the colonists, and why eventually we fought the war that gave us our independence. All right, so you can move on now. Make sure you fill out your study guide, and we will talk later, once you finish the second task in this unit, about some of the other reasons why we entered into the revolution, and then you'll be moving on to the revolution itself. If you have any questions or you're confused about one of our reasons, please don't hesitate to ask me. That's what I'm here for. Other than that, have a good day, and I hope you had fun.